but we're glad you're able to make it to this special session in the art of pitching. We have Heather Laver on the call, and she will get into her presentation in just a moment. But this particular session, we've invited folks from Philly and our PSL group, and of course our Pittsburgh chapter, and others who are interested in learning more about secrets on pitching. But before I turn the floor over to Heather, I do want to remind our audience that we have some amazing events coming up, all of which you're invited to, and they're all free. The first one is our graduation from our spring cohort, which is next Wednesday. There you'll have the opportunity to see the pitches from our 7 companies that have graduated, and also have time to network with everyone in attendance, including some of our amazing mentors who will be there. The following week, we have a session on cybersecurity issues. So that's certainly a hot topic, especially in this age of AI. Also on the same day of the 29th, we're doing an in-person event in the Princeton area, introducing the New Jersey ecosystem, AI ecosystem. So if you're anywhere close to New Jersey and in the Princeton area and want to meet people face to face, you are welcome, and we would love to see you there. And then last but not least, we have another in-person event with our partners at Philly Startup Leaders. This is their monthly welcome wagon on August 7th, beginning at 5:30. So sign up early because it does sell out, and we hope to see you at that event as well. Is there any other events or details, Don or Peter, you would like to share with our group before we move on? No. Great.
I think we're good.
All right. So again, before we turn it over to Heather, I know you're all familiar with what Founder Institute is, but if any of you are newcomers, we always like to remind folks that we are one of the largest, if not the largest, accelerator place in the world to build a fundable company. Our alumni is growing. Now we're up to 6,600. I think when Don and I started, it was well below that number, and that was just 2 years ago. Lots of billions of dollars raised, and 25,000 mentors and leaders across 100 countries or more. This is a global operation, and when you join, you have access to all of those mentors around the world to help you guide your journey. So how does that work? Well, we want great people. We're devoted to you from start to finish. We want to help you, but it's hard. It's a structured process. But then once you graduate, you get lifetime support, and you always have access to everyone to continue to get help as you grow your company. Just another nod to our mentors. As I mentioned, we have over 25,000 globally. I think in our Pennsylvania, New Jersey chapters, we have close to 200 just connected to our chapters. And what that means is that you get basically free advice, office hours, feedback, evaluation on your pitch, training, really anything that you need. Our mentors are here to help, and you got to take advantage of it. And as I mentioned, this is global. Just because you're in Philly or Pittsburgh and there's a mentor out there that's connected to our chapter who's in, I don't know, Germany, no problem. Find a time that works for the both of you, and you get to talk to that person and get advice. So that's it for our FI Global ecosystem. It's vast and large and ready to help you. And with that note, I will turn the floor over to Heather. And at the end, if anyone has any questions about FI specifically, as I pop them in the chat, or just reach out to Don or I or Peter after the session. Thanks. So I'm going to stop my share and turn it over to Heather.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Daria. Hi, everybody. My name is Heather Laver. I'm the founder and CEO of Ceemo.ai. I am also a Founder Institute mentor, so I'm around if y'all have any questions beyond this. But to get started, I have about maybe 25-30 minute presentation, then we'll get into Q&A, and a special surprise helping out another Founder Institute founder going over their pitch deck and seeing how to implement the stuff that we'll talk about in the presentation. So with that said, let me go ahead and share my screen. Daria or Dawn, if you could give me a thumbs up when it's on the screen, okay? Cool beans, let's go. Then let's get started. So hello again, my name is Heather Lauver, and I'm excited to introduce you to the art of pitching. During this short but informative course, you'll learn how to connect with your audience, craft a compelling story, command a stage, and pitch with confidence. Whether you're pitching your startup to an investor, trying to land a big sale, or kicking off a career-changing project, the fundamentals are the same, and you can master them. When it comes to pitching, two things are certain. First, every project needs a pitch deck. And second, every founder, every leader needs to present. As vital as these two things are to every project's future, why do they remain such a mystery? At Ceemo, we're determined to help leaders like you demystify the pitching process using our unique tips, tricks, and methods that we'll go over right now. Tips and tricks, which, by the way, have helped entrepreneurs raise over $170 million in venture capital. So let's dive in and increase your odds of getting funded too. To get started, let's take it back to the very beginning and talk about the goal of pitching. Lots of people will think, oh, it's to make money, for investors or executives to fire up that money gun in your general direction. Actually, while money is wonderful and necessary, and yes, definitely part of the pitching process, it's not in fact your primary goal, because getting that money is dependent upon your ability to be understood. In order to be understood, you need to explain who you are, what you do, and what you need to succeed, so that yes, someone will fire up that money gun in your general direction. In order to be understood, I want you to start with what I like to call the stoplight check-in. First, stop and ask yourself, what is my pitch goal? What do I want my audience to understand? When they do understand, what do I want them to do with that information? When creating your pitch, if anything doesn't serve that goal, throw it out. So much of what you keep versus what you discard depends on proceeding with caution and asking, who is my audience? What are their needs? What are their interests? How familiar are they with the topic at hand? Are they average Joes or industry experts? That should radically change what you say and how it's presented. So ask this question each time you prepare for a new pitch, because each audience will be different and your pitch needs to reflect that. All of this leads into the green light for moving forward. How can I connect with my audience's hearts and minds? How can I connect with them as human beings? How do I meet both my needs and theirs? Your pitch is really building the foundation of a relationship. It's not closing the deal. It's not all-encompassing due diligence. Rather, it's the first impression you hope will lead to investment and a long time frame of working together. After all, an investor isn't just investing in your ideas, in your company on its own in a vacuum. They're investing just as much in you as a person, someone they believe can fully implement that idea. Your pitch not only needs to convince them of the idea itself, but they also need to understand and believe that you are the person or the team who can make this idea a reality. That can't happen without building a relationship between you and your audience. Building that relationship depends on three key factors. It all begins with empathy. Start by building common ground with your audience. What passions do you share? What pain points can we all relate to? Use those commonalities to create a shared experience. Use storytelling to create a memorable moment, a shared experience that bonds you and your audience together. That shared experience is powerful. It's what bonds trauma survivors together, or my favorite, why two strangers light up when they find out they love the same book or TV show. Use that power to connect to your audience. It's so much harder to build empathy without authenticity. Try to always be your true self. By being bravely vulnerable, by being human, you will draw out the humanity in others. That act of bravery builds a powerful bond of trust. Our shared emotions between presenter and audience will help to create lasting connection. Sharing emotions together is a great way to build relationships, and a well-done pitch can be the foundation upon which a great relationship is built. One more likely to blossom into investment, productivity, and shared ideas becoming reality. The best and easiest way to convey all of these things, to create that shared experience of authenticity and trust, is through the power of storytelling. The human mind is hardwired for stories, whether it's the earliest humans telling each other our shared history around campfires, or a family sharing stories about our day over the dinner table, or my personal favorites, the all-important bedtime story, shaping young minds while filling their hearts. Stories have a way of conveying deep truths while creating strong and lasting bonds. Indeed, the way our own minds are wired, the way we view who we are as individuals, depends on the stories we tell ourselves. Stories matter because they carry great power. The same is true whether you're reading a story to a child or giving a presentation. As the saying goes, tell me a fact and I'll forget. Tell me a story and I will never forget. As much as possible while preparing your pitch, be mindful of creating a cohesive and compelling story so you'll engage with your audience, connect with their hearts and minds by finding that common ground and being your authentic self, so you can create relationships built on trust, all of which will help you to accomplish your goals. Now, to show you how to do that in detail, I'm going to follow my own advice and tell you a story. So get ready, get comfortable, and let's explore the innovator's journey. How you got to this point in your company or idea informs so much about your pitch, about the story you'll tell, and the stresses along the way. So, once upon a time, you had an idea. You thought long and hard about whether or not you should pursue it, if it was worth it. You saw a pain point, one you knew affected lots of other people just like you. You imagined a unique and wonderful solution. You could see a beautiful world unaffected by that awful pain point. And you knew the world was hungry for a solution, giving you plenty of potential for growth. You figured out why you were the person to solve this problem. Maybe you even recruited a team who could help. Lastly, you figured out what resources you'd need to make it happen and be a success. You thought about all of this and decided, yeah, I can make that happen. And with that, you moved from idea to adoption. You took the idea, dove in head first, and decided to go for it, to make it a reality. With you and your baby of a company, you moved forward, made the investment, and started on your journey. Now, if you're anything like me, this early phase, it can be so exciting, downright intoxicating. It's very, very easy, just like a kid on a sugar rush, to run up that hill so fast that you leap right over an unexpected cliff and crash into Burnout Ravine. It's just like hitting a tiny pothole, which is a mild nuisance to a slow-moving car. But that same pothole can spell disaster if you're a race car driving at upwards of 100 miles an hour. The faster you're moving, the easier it is to crash and burn out. But all is not lost. If you're able, if you're determined, if the stars align, you'll pick yourself up, grab some crutches, and reignite that passion. But this time, you'll temper it with a little bit of patience and wisdom. With that wisdom of hard-won experience, you learn from your mistakes, you adapt, and then you begin to scale. To implement your plans, to begin recruiting partners and investors, climbing the first hill along the path to the highest peak of the mountain, where success awaits. Finally, after that long, hard, difficult, emotionally draining climb, at long last you reach the first summit and achieve enlightenment. You are Abraham on the mountaintop, seeing all of history and everything to come. You can see everything, both the past and the future. It's beautiful and glorious, both in its entirety down to its smallest detail. When you think about telling your story in a pitch, you just know you have to tell it all. Anything less, and well, your audience just won't get it. They won't see the beauty that is everything. So along comes your audience. It's time to pitch your venture, to tell that perfect, all-encompassing macro view of a story, but you only have 10, 5, or worse, only 3 minutes in which to pitch. What are you going to do? They need to hear it all in all of its glory. There's just so much info they need to know. So you grab the audience by their hand and run as fast as you can. Hurry, they have to get to the mountaintop right now. This is why it feels so impossible to pitch your business in 5 minutes, because you just can't rush enlightenment. It took you months, maybe even years, to get to the mountaintop. How can anyone possibly expect your audience to get there in a few minutes? Besides, remember burnout ravine? Just like that race car, the faster you try to get through all of this information, the more likely it is your audience is going to crash. Burnout ravine quickly becomes the Grand Canyon of info overload. If that happens, your audience is going to check out and not care to reignite a passion they never had to begin with. You just can't rush enlightenment. But the good news is you don't have to. Your audience doesn't have to make it all the way to enlightenment. It's so much simpler than that. When it comes to pitching, all you need to do is get your pitch audience from idea to adoption while making sure that they trust and believe that you are perched on that mountaintop, seeing everything there is to see. So many founders think, how can I squeeze everything I need to say into my pitch? I want you to flip that on its head. Ask yourself, what is the absolute bare minimum I need to say to get my audience from idea to adoption? If you can do that, then all those other steps in between, they can just go away, because all you need to focus on is how efficiently you can get from idea to adoption. Now, how do you get them there? The exact same way you got there. Remember all those questions we talked about that you asked yourself when you first began your journey. Those are exactly the same things you need to cover in your pitch. If you sandwich those between an intro and an outro, you suddenly have every chapter necessary for a perfect pitch. It all starts with an introduction. Who are you? What company do you represent? And a one-sentence slogan that provides an introductory summary. It's a micro elevator pitch that lays a nice foundation of context, telling the audience what playground we're playing in today. And don't forget to include your name and email address so they know how to reach out when they want to come play in your playground. Next, a compelling problem. What's wrong with the world today? How many people are affected by it? Make it compelling, make it emotional, make it human. Next, your unique solution. How do you solve that exact problem? What makes you different? How much better will the world be when you've solved it? Make this your Wizard of Oz moment where the world goes from drab and dark and that awful problem to bright, happy, and colorful with your solution. That leads into market and financials. This is just enough of your business acumen to convince the audience that you're the enlightened guru on top of the mountain, seeing all and developing plans for the future. Hammer that point home by explaining why now and why you. Why is now the right time to take action? What will they miss out on if they don't jump into your playground right now? And most importantly, why are you the person or the team to make this happen? When someone invests, again, they're not just investing in an idea, project, or product. They're investing just as much, if not more so, in the person or the team they believe will make it happen. The penultimate piece of the puzzle, your ask for your future. What are the resources you need in order to reach your specific goals? No matter where you're pitching or why, always, always have an ask, but it doesn't have to be money. Oftentimes, when we ask for money, it's in order to hire help. So what if you just asked for the type of help you need? Sometimes if people aren't able to give their money, they can still offer their time, talents, and connections. So don't be shy. Ask for whatever it is you need, because you never know who in that audience will be the key to opening the next door of opportunity. After all of that, don't ever forget to conclude with what I like to call a grateful crescendo. Remind them of that compelling problem. And most importantly, help them feel the emotion of rising to that mountaintop of success, where the world will be so much better off because of what you could do together. Thank them for their time and leave them with that positive, memorable impression that you're the enlightened, humble, and grateful guru on the mountaintop, someone they want to work with, someone eager to welcome them into a better, brighter future. This is everything you need to cover in a traditional, like 5-minute pitch or so. But what about if you're restricted to only a 2-minute pitch? Well, let's make this even simpler. For shorter pitches, you only need to tackle 4 quick things. Who are you, with just your logo, name, title, and contact info on the slide. Think of it as a nice, pretty business card blown up full screen. Next, what you do, explained as quickly and succinctly as possible. As Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough yet. So demonstrate your prowess by explaining what you do simply and quickly. Next, your latest big success and your next big goal. This demonstrates your ability to set and achieve goals while also giving them some idea of where you are in the startup life cycle and what you're currently working toward. Finally, share the excitement of what you need in order to accomplish that big goal. But remember, no matter where you're pitching or how long you're pitching for, you are not begging for money. You are inviting them on an exciting opportunity that they are lucky enough to be part of. Wrap all that up in a thank you, and that's it. 4 quick things, 15 to 30 seconds each, just enough of a taste to get them excited to jump into your breakout room or come to your table to dive in, ask questions, and learn more. It's not a full pitch. It's not a rapid fire crash course at a million words a minute. Rather, it's a delicious appetizer, a teaser trailer enticing them to come ask questions. That's it. With these 2 frameworks, no matter what time limit you're pitching under, if you can convey each of these things, you will get your audience from idea to adoption. Now, once you get your audience to adoption, that's when they'll be so excited that they just have to come talk to you. You'll start having conversations, follow-up meetings, due diligence, all that good stuff. It's during that process when you, in essence, give them a hang glider so they can have a nice, gentle ascent to the mountaintop where they'll join you on the rest of your journey. Now that you know your pitch only needs to get your audience from idea to adoption, it's time to cover getting from idea to adoption in a standalone pitch deck that's being emailed to someone to read at their leisure versus you giving a presentation, speaking to an audience, whether you're standing on a stage or over Zoom like this. More often than not, entrepreneurs treat these 2 as one and the same, but they are entirely different mediums. To me, it's like comparing reading a book versus watching a movie. It may be the same exact story, but they are very different experiences. And yes, that's little 16-year-old me in a photo from when USA Today covered my very first company. When it comes to standalone pitch decks, think of it more like a booklet or brochure that's designed to be read alone at the audience's leisure with no other input from you, because it contains all the needed information in order to get that reader from idea to adoption. It's an entirely self-contained little capsule about your company sent out into the world to tell your story while you're off doing other stuff. This is often the piece that gets you the meeting with that potential investor, where you can then give your presentation. Now, reading a pitch is a much, much different set of circumstances than when you're giving a presentation, either on a stage or over Zoom. Suddenly you have a wealth of tools you don't get in a book. In this format, you get to engage both sight and sound, maximizing the many different ways that human beings learn and retain information. This helps you to create a cinematic experience that's focused on you and your company as the stars of the show. So let's show you what happens if you try to present with the standalone email-style pitch deck. When you do that, you're essentially asking your audience to simultaneously read and listen to you speak at the same time. Ask yourself, when was the last time you sat down to read a novel and listen to a podcast at the exact same time? Our brains were not designed to take in that much information from 2 separate sources all at once. We can't do it. It's simply too overwhelming. Yet, when you present with an email-style pitch deck, that's exactly what you're asking your audience to do. But I guarantee you, with the way our minds are wired, as soon as they see that giant block of text, your audience will start reading and their ears will shut off. No one will hear what you have to say. That is the exact opposite of what you should be trying to achieve as a presenter. So when you're designing your slides, I want you to think about a principle I like to call balancing attention. Giving a good presentation is a lot like a juggling act, except instead of juggling brightly colored balls, your job as a presenter is to juggle your audience's attention. That attention needs to be carefully and meticulously managed, split between you as the presenter and narrator and your slides. You are primarily an auditory source, while your slides are a visual source. This presents its own challenges to your juggling act because the human brain naturally focuses more of its energy on visual stimuli. The vast majority of our brain's processing power is devoted to interpreting signals from our eyes. Literally 90% of the information being absorbed by our brain is processed visually. That means in order for you, the auditory source, to be the star, you have to be exceptionally careful in how you plan your slide deck in order to ensure that you remain the star of the show. Think of it as making sure that every bit of that 90% of visual stimuli is there to serve you, to reinforce you, rather than distracting attention away from you. In short, the entire purpose of your slides is to make you look better, to make whatever you say more impactful, to make everything about your presentation more memorable. Because at all times, you should be Beyoncé. And your slides are your backup singers. Everyone should be focusing on you, the star of the show, while the rest of their attention is paid to the backup singers, which only serves to reinforce how flippin' awesome you are. So you might be asking yourself, how can I be Beyoncé? The trick is in following the example of Queen Bee's backup singers. All the single ladies. All the single ladies. Now put your hands up. Notice her backup singers faded back, letting Beyoncé carry on into the verse. After all, she has her backup singers for a reason, to make her shine. Naturally, Beyoncé would lose a little of her luster if they sang every single word she does as she does. Beyoncé is not, and never has been, a choir. This isn't about many voices becoming one, but rather one voice standing out from the rest. Similarly, you don't need to put every single word you say up on your slides. It limits their impact, makes them run together, and frankly, it just gets boring. After all, this is not merely a projected printout of your script. It's not a teleprompter. Instead, reserve your backup singers, your slides, for the hook, the chorus, the catchiest bits of an earworm you don't want forgotten. So use your slides to highlight certain impactful keywords, or better yet, to visualize meaningful concepts and statistics. Whatever you want to really drill into those heads, that's what goes on your slides. Think of it as a sporadic echo, a visual scaffolding to highlight and reinforce your most important statements. Finally, there's one deadly sin that backup singers should never ever commit. Thou shalt not start singing that catchy chorus while Beyoncé is about to sing the first verse. That'll get any backup singer fired because, spoilers, man, no one wants them, whether it's a TV show, the big game, or your slides. So try not to let your slides get ahead of you. Now, let's take a look at the Beyoncé principle in action. Generally speaking, for the majority of your presentation, you should have 75% of your audience's attention on you and 25% on your slide deck. Every so often, you can shift up that balance for the sake of powerful imagery to create extra memorable moments. But the point is, it should always be deliberate and planned. Attention must be wielded as a tool, harnessed and directed for maximum impact. That said, again, most of the time the audience's attention should be managed to highlight you. Just like with your backup singers, the catchiness of your song depends upon maintaining this balance to ensure your audience is both engaged and absorbing information easily. The balance is maintained by ensuring your slides always visually represent whatever you are currently saying. When the narration matches the visual, what the audience hears and what they see effortlessly matches, ensuring they easily understand, comprehend, and remember everything you're talking about. In short, you aren't making them work for it. Information is flowing freely and easily. This balance goes awry when the narration either no longer matches the visual, or worse, your slides start getting ahead of you, showing seemingly disconnected images that have nothing whatsoever to do with what you're talking about at the moment. Or in other words, spoilers. All of this confusion means the audience isn't listening to you at all anymore. They're too busy thinking, did he click the wrong slide? Did I miss something important? Is the puppy going to wear the turtleneck? I mean, I'd pay to see that, but what's with the windows? I am so lost. At this point, you could be saying that you know the true meaning of life, but no one's going to hear it. They're so confused, you might as well not even be on the stage at all. No one in history has mastered the Beyoncé principle better than Steve Jobs. Does the turtleneck make sense now? If this were a regular presentation, your audience's little aha moment would also be distracting them from what you're talking about. But anyway, when Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone, he famously filled the screen with the iPhone and only the iPhone. This ease and simplicity of pairing spoken word with immediately connected visuals is precisely what made Steve Jobs and his tech designer guy Kawasaki so revolutionary. To illustrate just how radical his approach was, let's contrast him with Bill Gates. It's just so busy. First off, not only does your eye not know where to go first, but it's literally chock full of spoilers. When he starts out with the first item, People Network, he's talking, but the audience isn't listening to him. They can't help but read ahead. It's human nature. Half the audience is wondering what the heck Other Experiences from Microsoft and Others is all about, while the other half is distracted by that sweet iMac in the corner. Now, whatever Bill's saying is going in one ear and out the other because it's just too much. When everything is up there, nothing has impact. So let's go back to Steve Jobs. Oh, so much better. When Steve had a vital piece of information he really wanted you to remember, he put it front and center, no distractions. Literally, all of your attention is on Steve and that number. In that moment, he is Beyoncé. He's the star of the show. He is masterfully guiding your attention right where he wants it, telling his story to its fullest potential. Whenever Steve had more information to convey, he always did so in a clear, organized, easy to follow pattern. Your eye knows exactly where to go and what's being talked about. But Steve never showed the entire list at the beginning. He understood spoilers. This is how he started. He introduced you to what he was talking about first. The iPad, a nice foundation of context. We know the playground we're playing in today. Then, as he said the next relevant fact, it appeared on the screen. Then the next. He's walking the audience through, step by step, so that no one reads ahead and no one gets lost. No one takes their attention away from the star of the show. This is why Steve Jobs is remembered as a master communicator, because he always expertly juggled his audience's attention, utilizing both their visual and auditory learning in order to balance their attention, focusing all of the audience's energy on him as he effortlessly conveyed his message, making it both impactful and memorable. This may feel like a huge legacy to live up to, a massive bar to reach, but you can do it. Just like juggling in real life, this skill can be learned. It's really simple. Be mindful of your audience. Design your slides in order to manage their attention. And never forget, you're already Beyoncé. You've worked hard to perfect your business. You deserve a perfect pitch deck that emphasizes the star that you already are. If you need help with that, don't worry. That's precisely what we're here to help with. But if you want a little extra help, that's what Ceemo's for. This engine that's designed to be your very own automated CMO, making branding, marketing, and pitching easier than ever before. This is my haha. It all starts with our simple brand quiz. Tell us about your company and choose 3 keywords defining how you want to be perceived by your customers. We take that unique strategy and use it to generate a complete custom brand book with wordmark logo, color scheme, font suite, unique identity, and design motifs. We also offer all sorts of hands-on design and pitch support too to further tweak and enhance your brand. We're still in beta, yet this engine is able to independently replicate brands that took humans months to create, all in just 10 minutes or less. But we don't stop there. Ceemo then takes your brand and instantly creates custom marketing, pitching templates in Google Workspace, including our famous 40+ slide pitch deck templates, one-pagers, letterhead, social media, all that good stuff. Best of all, every asset comes with mini textbook guides that fill you in on everything I've learned, helping founders like you raise that 170 million in venture capital. New assets are coming soon for sales, sponsorships, and more. Plus, our team of experts are always on hand for personalized help and support. If you'd like to join the Ceemo beta, it's super simple. Just head over to Ceemo.ai to sign up now to get your friendly automated CMO first. Don't forget, you can also get an exclusive 25% off all of our subscription tiers with discount code EXCEED. In the meantime, don't forget our handy free resource guide at Ceemo.ai/resources, which is chock full of all sorts of amazing free stuff to get you started creating your own perfect pitch deck. Thank you very much, and I really hope this was helpful. I'll see you soon at Ceemo. Now, with all that said, I'd like to bring up Michael, who's a lovely volunteer from Founder Institute New York. He has been brave enough to let me tackle his pitch deck to show you how to implement some of the topics covered in the course that we just went through. While we're doing that, please pile all sorts of cute questions and stuff in the Q&A box or chat, and we'll cover those in a second. But I'd love to bring Michael up real quick to do a quick introduction of you and your company while I pull up your slides.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am from the New York branch of FI. My name is Michael Ramin. I'm the founder of the adventure brand Kionia and the inventor of the next revolution in pet safety. Our first product is a wearable device that actually has an integrated airbag system, and you'll see that inside of our slides and our program. And Kionia is to expand further on that to become the Patagonia of the pet world. So like high quality, durable, like adventure gear for your dog.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. Okay. So I got Michael's deck earlier today, and very quickly went through it. I'd love to show you a couple things, and I highlighted some slides to show you ways to implement what we covered in the course just now. So these are Michael's original slides. So obviously we have an intro slide here. Let's see.
These are from
An
the three,
introduction.
the,
Yeah, the
the
3-minute
old
one.
3-minute one, yeah.
Yeah. So there's an introduction slide, problem with a little bit of video, how existing solutions tackle this problem, and then the difference of Michael's innovation here, product showcase, how competitors' reviews work out, obviously not great, competitive analysis showing how they're different, an overall go-to-market strategy, Tam Sam Sam, classic, pricing and profit, the different styles of the products, their ask, always good to have at the end, and then a thank you slide. So with all of that said, what would I change? There are 3 key points that I want to cover, and then I'll give you examples. First, simplify. This deck is a classic example of the difference between an email deck versus a presentation deck. I think it's a fabulous email deck. It's great. It has everything you need to cover the full story from beginning to end. But the amount of text on it is going to overwhelm the audience and distract from Michael being the star of the show. So I'm going to show you how I would simplify some of those slides to turn a great email deck into a perfect presentation deck. Well, perfect in air quotes because I had an hour, but you'll see what I mean at least. Next key point, margins. Some of the design elements were a little bit tight. Margins are all about what's known as negative space. It's not just about your design elements themselves, but how they are placed in space on the slide and the spacing around them, the empty space that frames it. And it can be really tough as a founder to feel like I gotta cram everything I can into this slide. And human beings are design elements are a lot like human beings, where we like having our own personal bubble. So it's a great idea to make sure that all of your design elements have space around them, because if you don't, oddly enough, believe it or not, tight, uneven margins can have a significant emotional impact on your audience. Literally, horror filming techniques take advantage of this weird psychological quirk, where next time you watch Psycho, pay attention to the shower scene and how when it starts out, nice, generous margins. The more intense it gets, the tighter the shots get and the more uneven it is. So you can end up inadvertently pulling the same kind of thing in your deck if you don't watch the margins. And then lastly, in the same boat, symmetry. Some of the stuff was like ever so slightly not centered. And so that's an easy way to polish up the look of your deck very quickly by making sure it's all perfectly aligned. So all that said, let's jump into some examples. So here's the original intro slide. I would make just a few small tweaks to create this. I centered everything against itself. And I flopped the background colors for the sake of readability. Color contrast is really important. It's also a weird quirk of disability accessibility to make sure that the up to 20% of your audience that may have visual impairments are still likely to be able to read your content. So I just swapped the backgrounds. Lastly, it's always good to know the name of the person presenting. So Michael, I slapped your name up there. And then I made the email contact information a little bit bigger to make sure that if you're pitching over Zoom, it'll be fine. But what if you're pitching in person in a ballroom setting? You want to make sure that that text is readable from the back row. So a good rule of thumb when you're designing your slides, if you know you're going to be pitching in a live environment, stand up from your desk and take 10 steps back and make sure that you can still read that content. If you can't, make it bigger. Next, the introduction slide.
Can you show the before and after again?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So here's the before. And then here's the after. Just very slight changes.
Gotcha.
Got that?
Thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Peter. Okay, next, the introduction slide. This is a great, I kind of go back and forth on this. In an email deck, it does make sense. You're setting that foundation of context. But what I want you to balance that against is the fact that you will spend hours, weeks, maybe even months perfecting this slide deck. You're going to care about every little bit of it, and you should. But the average investor spends less than a minute and 20 seconds looking at your deck before they decide whether or not to meet with you. And it sounds really disappointing and frankly insulting, and I totally get that. It is really frustrating that they spend so little time on it. But you want to think through those first 2-3 slides are so important. Odds are it may be the only thing they look at. So an introduction slide is going to eat into that time. You want them to care about the problem. You want them to connect to that problem and understand it viscerally so that they believe that someone will spend money to solve that problem. So instead, I want you to think through how could you convey the introduction in one sentence on the intro slide? Could you change this early sentence here of pioneering pet safety redefining adventures to instead act as a better intro? That introductory slogan, a lot of people think of it, oh, it's a marketing slogan, I should use that. It's really not. That opening sentence needs to be your micro elevator pitch that helps people understand at least 2 out of 3 things. What industry you're in, who you are serving, or what your main value prop is. The more you can squeeze as many of those into a short, crisp sentence, the better, because then they'll understand in a moment what field are you in, etc., and is there a viable problem here that we can make money off of. So if you can completely scrap the introduction slide, great. But to show you how to do something like that, all of this text, I boiled it down to one quick statement: protecting your best friend on the road to adventure. So that's my quick 5-minute attempt at turning that value prop, that mission statement, into one short sentence and then making it visualized. But ideally, I'd put that on the opening slide. So again, before, after. Now, the problem slide. Personally, I am very torn on using video during a presentation. It can be great in an email deck. It can be engaging and help people better understand viscerally and emotionally the problem you're solving, or it can help with explaining a very highly technical solution. But the problem is in a presentation, it is going to yank more attention away from you to the visual. So you have to be very careful when you use it. Second, that's a lot of text up there. So I'm going to show you how you take the same content and streamline it so it is less heavy on the eyes so that you can put more of your audience's energy on you. I'm not in love with the layout I did, but here's the general idea. I took those 4 stats and tried to choose just your top 3 first. The reason for that: as human beings, our working memory is great at remembering exactly 3 things at a time. Countless studies have shown the minute you add a fourth thing, our brain can't handle it, and we instantly forget all of them. We can remember 3, stick to 3. The minute you add a fourth, you're decreasing the odds that the audience will remember what you have to say. So I tried to narrow down what the most important facts were. Now, that's not to say that you couldn't say in support of another statement, you could add this cool stat about a 60-pound dog traveling at 60 miles per hour will become a projectile with over 7,000 foot-pounds of force. That's scary as hell and really encapsulates why this is a problem. But you could verbally say that part in support of one of these other statements. So I narrowed it down. I made the numbers pop out by making them highlight there. And then I also bolded them so that it kind of directs the eye of where to go and what's most important. It really helps with skimmability of the text so that they maintain enough brain power to listen to you. Another key fact that you could do if you wanted to, instead of putting the numbers in these bubbles, you could do icons that visualize that stat somehow. So you could put a dog harness here, you could put an injured dog here, you could put a tombstone or something there if you wanted to, so that you're visualizing what that statement is. When you pair words with immediately connected images, you increase memory retention by over 400%. So words and immediately connected images are very helpful. So again, problem, redone. Problem, redone. Okay, I took the same approach with the existing solution slide. You may not necessarily need this in a short pitch because I think if I had more time, I could encapsulate existing solution into the problem slide. I think that could be done. But without much time, I flopped the layout to make it visually interesting. But when you repeat the same ways of organizing information, the same layouts, it's one less thing your audience has to think about. So they can get used to how you present information over the course of a presentation. And it just makes it easier and saves them more brain power so they can focus on content. So same thing, this is an example where instead of numbers, I put icons in. And again, highlighted and bolded things. Now, next, I'll show you again. So before, after, very similar to the first one. Now the pricing and profit slide. This is a great example to me of trying to do too much all in one slide. And it gets to be overwhelming. There's a graph, and I also want you to think about how many times you are asking the audience to physically move their eyeballs. And I know that sounds really crazy, but it's all about mental and physical effort. And you really want it to be as easy as possible to digest information. So in this case, on the pricing side, you're starting out asking the audience to move their eyes down and across on the chart, so the rows and the columns. Then you're asking them to flip it and go primarily left, up a little bit, and then more to the right. Start on the left, up a little bit, over to the right. And then you're asking them to go down again. But there's no clear guide. It's not totally straight across. It's a lot of information all at once. There are standard ways that information is presented in pitch decks specifically because investors are used to it. They don't have to learn a new way to process information. They can get the point at a glance. So I think this ideally should be split. You need to have one page about your pricing that is all about what does the customer pay? Because the first goal you need to accomplish is to help the investor understand that you perfectly understand the customer's pain point, the customer's behavior, and why they will purchase from you. So pricing is part of that narrative. It should go problem, solution, what they pay. It's a full user journey. So cover pricing there. Then you're going to go into what I call the meat and potatoes part, which is the business fundamentals behind what the customer sees. That's when you would get into the more complex financials, but still presented very cleanly. At this point, you cover a few quick stats. What's your profit margin? So they already know what it costs at this point. You want to tell them our profit margin is X. You could include, because your original graph covered this, what percentage of the market you expect to capture by 2030. But honestly, at an early stage, you can leave that out. Investors know projections are BS. It's more about proving unit economics than saying you're actually going to capture a certain percentage. So your financials, your projections really need to only go out 3 years or so before a seed stage. So I cut your projections down. I filled in fake numbers and put it just in a graph. So they're used to that hockey stick graph. They know what that means. The only thing I typically add is a summary at the top of exactly how much money I'm talking about. That way I don't have to ask the audience to go, okay, that graph goes up to here. Where is that on the margin over here? Okay, that number is roughly 3 something something. So you're just making it easier and simpler for them to go, okay, 246, great. And then if you want to add expenses, if you have that much information, keep it simple and add that to the bar graph. And then there you go. It only takes a couple seconds for them to go profit margin, market capture, projections. Cool. It's processed so much faster than all of this. Now, granted, this does have a little more information in it, but you can get into that later during the investor call. You don't need to cover that in an initial presentation. So before, after, before, after. Okay. 2 last quick slides, and these are really simple. The ask. This is oddly a little too much information and not enough in other ways. When you're raising money, you need to be able to tell them how much are you raising, and ideally before you even get to the ask, they'll already know what milestone you're trying to reach with that money. But we'll get into that in a second. So how would I reframe this? I made up numbers here. I don't know if this is Michael's actual ask. We're raising $1 million at a pre-seed round on a safe with a $5 million cap and a 20% discount. Boom, boom, boom. The investor knows, what are you asking for? What are the terms? What's the investment vehicle? Done. Then you're going to give a rough use of funds. There's some debate right now between investors if this is even worthwhile, but personally, I think it is, to show a breakdown of how the money's being spent. It's not so much so that they understand it. It's enough to tell them, trust me, I have a plan. I have budgeted out where every dollar is going. Here's a rough overview. You're not spending other time diving into the entire overview, but you're telling them that overview and that budget exists. So I think it's worthwhile, but your mileage may vary. Then again, obviously you should have already covered what your milestones are, what you're accomplishing with that money, and you just give them a quick summary of what are the main key points. With this money, we'll get to X number in sales and this amount of profit if you're going to hit profitability. If you're not profitable, tell them when you'll hit break even. And that's it. Simple ask. So cutting down all that text to what are the main bullet points. Now, lastly, the thank you slide. Again, this is fine for an email deck. I still think it's a little wordy. This is where we get into what I called that grateful crescendo. You want to basically give them a sense of what's known in nonprofit world as a giver's high, where you want them to feel like their dollars are going to have an impact. Except we're not talking about nonprofits here. We're talking about venture capital. You want them to feel and believe that their dollars can solve this problem and create a better world, and they'll make a lot of money doing it. So the more you can close on that high, the better. And the best way to do that is to very quickly harken back to the problem and make them feel that sense of, oh my gosh, we solved it and we're all stinking rich now. So give them that sense of concluding mission objective statement that helps them feel the sense of, we can do this. So I didn't have time because I was running out of time to come up with what that concluding statement was. Sorry, Michael. Instead, I just did a very quick thank you slide. And my favorite thing to do is to repeat the opening slide. That way you open and close with an immediate memorable thing of, this is me, this is my logo, this is what I do. And it helps it really stick in the audience's mind who you are, what you do, and why it matters. So the only thing I'd change here is instead of saying thank you, I'd put that concluding grateful crescendo statement. So again, thank you. Thank you. And now, last part. what's missing? The only thing missing, and I know you probably have this in another deck, Michael, so apologies, but I do think these should be in a 3-minute deck. Traction and milestones, and these two are related. My favorite thing to do is to show a timeline, one looking backward in one brand color, one looking forward in another brand color with little arrows showing the difference. And the reason for that is, on the traction slide, it accomplishes two things. One, it helps show where you are in the startup life cycle. Two, it shows the investor you have a habit of not only setting goals, but then achieving them. So that when you get to the milestones and the roadmap of looking ahead, they can trust and believe you'll hit those milestones too, because look, you've already been doing it. So again, traction, milestones. Then lastly, the team. At an early stage, again, they're not just investing in the company, they are investing in you. 9 out of 10 startups fail. So you need to convince them that you are going to be that one that succeeds. And the key to doing that is the team. And it's really simple. Show pictures of the team, names, titles, and then 2 to 3 logos of either where they went to college, who trained them, or large companies they've worked for that are relevant to whatever it is they do on the team. That'll answer the 2 questions investors ask about the team. Do I trust and believe that these people have the skills and training necessary to execute on this plan? And 2, have they been trained or vetted by someone I know and trust? If you can accomplish that in a team slide very quickly, you'll be fine. So those are the 3 I think are missing. And yeah, overall, that's what I do to improve that deck. Any questions, Michael?
Just that was incredible. And your deck before was insane. That was so cool how everything was flowing together. Is like if your AI does that, like I want it. That was immersive and the way that it flowed with how you were talking. And I've always been like, I don't want 1,000 slides because that's just too many slides. But I've actually had a slide where it's basically the same slide, just a picture changed into one. And from you've inspired me now to be like, okay, if it's a pitch deck online or like that, I'm doing that, it's okay to have like slides that are progressive like that and have just a multiple slides. You're right. This deck is about 2 months old. It's my first deck ever.
Oh, wow.
Uh, I have a small advantage. In my day job, I'm an architect, so I know a little bit about design and colors. But uh, thrilled with everything that you've shown us. That's very, very amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. And yeah, I'll share the edited copy with you if you want it for anything. But thanks. The AI does not do all of the cool animations and transitions and storytelling yet, but we're working on it. So it'll be there eventually. But thanks. Cool. Now I'd love to get into Q&A from the audience if we have time, or are we at time? Don, do we have time for Q&A?
Yeah, we're good. Definitely, as long as you want to go, and we'd love to, bask in your brilliance. So absolutely, yeah, please continue.
Okay, cool. Okay, I see in chat Peter said, what about a go-to-market slide? Yes, go-to-market slides are very important. I see those, there are a couple ways you can do them. I think if you're clever, you can cover that in the milestone roadmap slide where you explain, okay, let me back up. For the milestones or roadmap slide, I want you to work backwards. The very last bullet point should be, what will you accomplish 12 to 18 months out with that investment that you're seeking? Then from there, work backwards across the bullets as you're building the deck, I mean, and think about the strategic steps you need to take to accomplish that 18-month milestone. So if you do it that way, you can work in your go-to-market strategy in those milestone bullet points. So you can say, okay, I want to get to, well, in our deck, I want to get to 1.2 million in sales in 2024. In order to accomplish that, I need to make this many new partnerships. I need to get this many users. In order to do that, I have this sales funnel tactic, blah, 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 blah. So
Right.
you can
So
kind
you
of,
can
does that make sense?
you can walk backwards and sort of show, hey, here's where the product is going to be, and here's where the marketing strategy is going to be at each of those milestones.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is more of a traditional sales funnel slide where you can talk about, okay, here's the overall market that we're going after. In our case, okay, we're going after the entrepreneurial market and startup founders. I narrow that down by saying our key target market is founders in the US. That's the first part of the bubble narrow down. Then, but that's still a giant pool. So I'm going to go after first-time founders, highly technical founders, and medical founders because I have a specialty in that. And so you can show how you've strategically narrowed down your go-to-market strategy and then talk about how you plan to reach these people. So yeah, there are a couple different ways you can do
So
it.
does that make sense to put like after the market opportunity where you're showing your Tam Sam Sam and then you're like, all right, this is what we're really going to focus on, and then here's how we're going to reach them, and here's where we have this competitive advantage in reaching that market, or people on our team that already have connections in in that market or that segment.
Yes, exactly. And that actually brings up a really great point, and you touched on that beautifully, that another mistake I see founders make is they think about each slide in a deck as completely separate things, and a lot of templates make this mistake. Rather than helping founders see, you're crafting an argument about why you need that money and why you're going to succeed. And ideally, each slide should lead into the next to form an overarching narrative argument. So if you build your market and go-to-market strategy this way, you can start with, like you said, the Tam Sam Sam. Then you can say, here's how it branches down into our go-to-market strategy. Here's how that reflects in the broader market and how we stand out. And so each slide is building on the one that came before it and teeing up the one that comes next.
Cool.
I got a question on the Tam Sam song.
Sure.
So Tam Sam song, all of us pretty much do it the same because that's the kind of the standard. Do you have any ideas of how to like break that out? Like if we're using multiple slides now and we're like freeing ourselves from the stagnation of the PowerPoint from 1995, uh, what are some of these ways that we can kind of break the old narrative? Because I've struggled with that. I've been like, let's have the Tam Sam song here and put something else there, and now it's a graph, and now it's just too much.
Yeah. The a great way to think about, do I break the mold or do I not, isn't necessarily going after it to break the mold. What's more important is how do I convey information as easily as possible. And that's where like your pricing and product slide was working against you. Was, yeah, it was different, but it wasn't different in a way that made the information easier. So if the easiest way for someone to process your market opportunity is a Tam Sam Sam, it doesn't matter that everyone else uses it because it's efficient. So yeah, play with it. But
What
yeah,
one thing I wanted to add to this Tam Sam Sam is I've heard multiple investors say they hate it though when your SOM is just saying, oh, we're going to get 5% of the market or 10% of the
yes,
market. Don't do that.
yes,
A specific, like, identify your niche. Don't say, oh, we're getting 10% of the whole market, because
yes,
they all say that's just utter nonsense and
I've
not
gotten
really
that
credible.
feedback too. That's why mine's only 0.25 because inside of our niche
Oh, no, don't
of
use a
pet owners.
percentage. Don't do a
Oh,
yeah,
just
percentage.
not at all.
Say this is where we're starting. We're starting with
Okay.
pet owners on the East Coast, and we know that means that there's 50 million dogs, and that's who we're starting with. Or start with
yeah,
some narrowly defined niche. Don't use a percentage is the advice I've heard from other investors.
yeah.
Okay.
There's a reason for that. The underlying thought process there is, you remember the whole thing about being the guru on the mountain? You want to convince the investor that you are the expert, that you have thought every little detail through. If you say, if we only capture 1% of this market, we'll be worth such and such, you're giving the impression, whether you intended it or not, whether you are or not, of being lazy. That you haven't actually thought through what your target market is or what the opportunity is. It's a throwaway line that says, oh, the market's big enough, we can compete and be fine. It's laziness. And it's counter to that goal of being that guru. So the more effective thing is to show your homework, show the effort, and say, like, for example, in my TAM SAM, I said that our overall SOM represents 115,000 users, which is a $200 million opportunity. So I'm showing I've done the math, I've done the unit economics, I know how many users it would take to get to that number. And then I backed that up and looked at my competitors and showed how long it took them to get to 115,000 users and what that opportunity was for them. So I said, Canva reached that user count in year 2. I'm not saying we'll do the same because that was Canva, but it's at least showing I've done the unit economics, I've done the work, and I know my market. So that's a much more effective argument than just, oh, if we get 1%, we'll be rich. Like, it's just about effort.
How do you balance that additional information and how busy that can make? Because I have all of those Excel spreadsheets that break it all down, and these are the people that hike with their dog, and these are the people that don't. And 12% of people don't care about their dog, so they throw them in the back of the pickup. They're not our customer. But like, I don't need to say all of that inside of the presentation. It's just too much. How do you walk that line?
Yeah, let me actually show you what my TAM SAM slide looks like. 1 second. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna share my screen and I'll show you how I laid that out. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so at the top of the slide, I said market opportunity. Our startups are our beachhead. We're growing to SMBs, nonprofits, and campaigns. So there they understand we're starting small, growing big. So now let's look at the market opportunity. I used the same exact TAM SAM SOM layout, but I added extra detail. So it says, our overall TAM is X, and then I backed up that number. I said that there are 305 million startups globally run by 475 million entrepreneurs. During my talk track, I say, okay, if we took our overall lifetime customer value, multiplied it by that, we get 545 billion. But obviously we're not going to capture every single founder, and they know that, and I know that. So then we break it down to key target market. I detail who that key target market is, and then we break it down further. So 205 million with first-time founders in the US, primarily in accelerators and university programs. Canva reached that target in year 2. And then I talk about, okay, but that's just our beachhead. How do we grow beyond that? I use that little bit of empty space to talk about how our technology grows into other verticals. So for instance, we've developed a proprietary color coding language that applies your brand across other technology. So imagine a one-click branded UI UX prototype in Figma, a one-click branded Shopify or Squarespace website. Or if Canva or Adobe buy us and implement our system, all of Canva's library of stock assets could be one click in your fonts and colors. So that kind of thing. So it gives them an idea that, okay, here's our starting beachhead, but we've thought through a strategy for that bigger unicorn exit and how to get there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, as I put in the chat, I think, don't know if, you're thinking, but what I've tended to do is have a whole litany of slides in an appendix, which when you're presenting, right, you're planning on presenting your 6 in your time, and then somebody says, hey, Michael, what about, dogs that if I want to take them hiking? Well, thank you for that question. And you zip over to and you show the hiking site. It's like, wow, like this guy's got it, right? So that will win over that. And of course, you can choose to include the entire appendix or some subset when you email stuff, because somebody goes through and they see this, the 6 or 8 or 10, and then they see appendix. And if they're done, they're not interested, or they've had enough, right? They've used the half. Um, okay, appendix, don't need it. Fine. But if they are curious, they can flip through and they have some aha moments. Oh, wow, I never even thought about, taking dogs hiking. So,
Yep, absolutely. That's why my appendix ballooned over 20 slides. I don't send it all out in the email version, but yeah, it shows again that guru on the mountain that you've thought enough about the questions that will come from your pitch, that you've prepared ahead of time, and that you've talked to enough investors that you've gotten those questions and you put in the effort to make sure that they were easily addressed. So yeah, appendices are fantastic. Any other questions?
there was a question in the chat about an example of a mission objective statement for the last slide.
Yes. Okay, I don't think of a good one, or if I should just go back to my own deck again.
My mission statement at the end, and I'm still reworking it, wound up being transform your investment into a lifeline. Let's save dogs and turn your capital into compassion. I need to redo it. I think it's too long, but it pulls the right strings.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it pulls them along on your mission. Right.
yeah, I like it. I do think the impulse to shorten it is good. Um, the one that I ended up using was, and I'm not even really happy with this. I keep wanting to tweak it. Is our whole thing is that we combine data, strategy, and AI. And so I said, use the power of data and AI to unleash 21st century branding and marketing, which harkens back to obviously a problem statement you haven't heard. But that was one that I ended up using. I'm trying to remember what the other ones were. Another one was your AI CMO using data to demystify marketing. So yeah, the goal really is you want to cover one of those three things, or up to all three if you can, of what market are you in, what's your main value prop differentiator, or who is the person you're serving that has that pain point. And so if you can cover at least one of those, if not two, you're doing really well.
That's a real good point. I see so many people on their deck who just put a marketing tagline and you have no idea what they do until they get 4 or 5 slides into the deck. And you're just
Yep.
like, oh, that's what they do.
Yeah. And investors they don't have the time. They won't go 4 or 5 slides in to get it. They're too busy. They look at I think the number's over 3,500 pitch
Yeah.
decks a year. Like, they just don't have time for that. One of my favorite games to play with taglines is what I call brand divorcing, where you take the tagline, you completely divorce it from your company and stick it on a competitor or a completely different industry and see if it still works. If it still works, it's not telling them anything helpful. It's not telling them about who you are or what you do or how you stand out in your market. It's just fluff, and meaningless fluff isn't going to get the money.
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I have pet peeves with certain marketing, but hey, what do I know, right? When Toyota came up with "Let's Go Places," I hear that, it annoys me. What do you go play? That's like a restaurant saying, "Let's eat food." Like,
Yes.
that's so freaking generic. Let's go places. That does not inspire me to do anything.
Nope.
They can do that because they're an established brand where the startup isn't.
Yeah, Nike's like, do more. I'm like, I'm always doing more. How can I do more?
I want to get more done with less.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
Um,
so one
yeah.
of the key things you touched upon was the reader deck versus the presentation deck. What if you have sort of a disruptive business or a deep tech that, doesn't really do well necessarily as a reader deck? Are you better off just creating like a one pager just to spark people's interest and then say, listen, if you want the deck, reach out to me and I'll present it?
Yeah, there's actually even beyond just highly technical founders, there is a trend among investors to say, I don't want an email deck anymore because they spend less than a minute and a half on it. So like how many slides are they really going to get through? So there are kind of two schools of thought that are emerging from that. One is stick to a one pager, except most people's one pagers are still too information heavy. The
Hmm.
other is record a short video. Give me the
Okay.
elevator pitch as if you bumped into me in an elevator. Give me that 30 to 60-second video. No slides,
Yeah. No
no
slides,
visuals.
30
Just,
second video. Yeah, I like
and
that.
to me, what that accomplishes is it not only, hopefully, if you do it well, conveys business fundamentals and the intro to that, but it also shows that you as a founder can hook someone's attention, tell that story quickly, and get your point across. Because that matters not just if you're talking to an investor, but helps that investor believe that you can close a deal, you can make a sale, you can hook a customer, tell your story very quickly, and you know your market well enough to distill it down to something simple. So I
Okay.
kind of like that trend.
So
And
like
I
that,
think,
attach that with like just a brief, 3 sentence explanation of what your business is. Here's the video with a little more, and then
yep.
invite them to like, hey, I'd love to come pitch.
Mm-hmm. And then you get ready. The next step after that would be like a 3-minute presentation.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, one of my earliest successes was I helped a highly technical medical founder distill their investor pitch down to 3 minutes. And one of her first meetings with an investor, with a big VC fund, and they said, okay, you technically have 20 minutes to pitch, but well, better if you could get it into 10. And they were really tired at that point. And she's like, 10, I'll be done in 3. And the guy went, if you can really get this done in 3, I'll write you a check today. And she went, cool.
Wow,
And she did it and got it. So
that is terrific.
if you can really distill what that entire investor deck of getting, not a full investor deck, but like what the pain point is, what the customer is, the pricing solution market, what you're working toward. If you can get through that in 3 minutes, it really shows a command of you as that guru on the mountaintop and
Mm,
convinces them that you can go out there and make sales because you know what you're doing, why, and who you're serving.
yep.
Yep.
Cool. It's a great story.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, and I have the opposite story really, which is I was training a software salesperson, and he was doing his pitch, and the prospect said, "Oh, okay, that really sounds good. All right, how do we get started?" He says, "No, but I haven't finished." And he started, let me tell you more about the product and service. And then he said, I don't know what it was. Oh, I didn't realize it doesn't work with XYZ. Okay, so I don't think it would actually. He unsold
Yep.
the prospect because he was so focused. I need to spew all of the information that I have decided I'm going. No, if after one slide they say I love it, I'm in. Shut up and take the check.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, that's a big part of it. And I think that also speaks to a lot of problems that founders have where you live, eat, sleep, breathe your venture all day, every day, and you've been on that multi-year long journey and you know every single detail and you are hopefully in love with your product. That I think one of the biggest challenges we face in creating a pitch deck and getting it tight, and I've run into this problem. What do you tell? What do you cut out? Like you're so close to the problem, you don't even know what's most important anymore because you have all of this wealth of knowledge to pull from. How do you parse it out? Like to me, it's the opposite of that saying where you're almost like you can't see the trees for the forest at that point because you've got such that macro view. So yeah, how do you have the discipline as a founder to not spew all of it and just narrow it down to the bare minimum of what someone needs to know to get from idea to adoption? Yeah.
Yeah, because
That's
the point
totally a
is
problem.
because
That
go
why
ahead.
don't you go first, Peter?
I was just gonna say the purpose of it is not to close them. Like you got lucky in that you got one where they actually wrote them the check, but odds are you're not going to close them after your 3 or 5 minute pitch. The goal is to get their attention, and sometimes it's better to have less information so they'll ask you those questions rather than disclose some information that's going to, turn them off. I like the way a friend of mine, an investor, put it once. He's like, the investor will take you down their journey. So you just provide sort of the basics, and then they will take you down their journey of what information they need to make their decision.
Yep. Yeah, and that's another trick of where when you get in that mindset where you feel like you're begging for money, I feel like founders get in a trap where they feel like they have to look so smart, and the investor has to think of them, the founder, as smart. My favorite way to flip that around is instead think of it as, how can you set it up so the investor feels smart? How can you say just enough that you tease them out to where you want them to be, and they have the aha moment and they go, oh my God, you could do this with it. And you're like, I know, right? And so then you have this moment of gelling with the investor, but they feel like the hero. They feel like they figured it out. And so how can you say just enough to get that spark to happen that they get it? And plus, for you as a founder, if they do have that moment and they do get it, you know that they're a well-aligned investor. But Michael, what were you going to say?
I have a big problem with that over information. I can talk really quickly. I can distill a lot of information, and I can those slides. I can talk really quickly. What I found that actually works for that is I'll actually pitch people that have no idea what I'm doing. I'll just people, or I'll take one of my friends who had no idea that I work 2 jobs, and I'll do the presentation to them, and that helps me distill it down, because the problem of, yeah, I know way too much information while you're looking and understand the entirety of the forest.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, I've been doing pitch decks for over 10 years now, and I have pitch. I'm famous for being able to distill it down really quickly. It took me months to distill my own because I had that step back and figure out what do they actually need to know. So yeah, it's why I think a lot of other AI pitch narrative generators, pitch generators, helping founders understand how to reframe their story and do it simpler. So that's what we're building right now, is how to do that.
The founder, as the CEO of the company, you're getting a call from marketing, you're getting a call from prototyping, you're continually getting started with more and more and more information.
He asked a question, so I think we can answer relatively quickly, and then I'm going to certainly thank you for all this wonderful information. The question is, do investors typically prefer boot? Yes, but remember that, and this is right, one thing that you could be, if you're talking to somebody, again, for all this revenue and so on, I'm not interested anymore. If you tell a kindergarten teacher that you want them to teach calculus, no. Conversely, you tell a calculus teacher to go help them tie their shoes, no. So you've got somebody, at the idea stage, because maybe they only have a $10,000 budget. You're not going to get any piece of Google with $10,000, but you'll get somebody early on. So that's my 2 cents. What do you think, Heather?
Yeah. And it also depends on the industry, because, for instance, if you go to a biotech or medical investor, they're going to be totally used to the idea that you don't have customers yet, because
Yeah.
depending on the industry, of course. If you already have people paying for it, that is definitely going to give you a leg up because it shows that you're closer to figuring out product on your customer and their pain point. But there's always an exception. We ran into that problem where my company started as a consultancy and we did over 100K in revenue without really trying. We didn't spend any money on marketing. But to some investors, it totally played against us because they were convinced no one ever goes from consulting to SaaS. That's an impossible bridge to cross. We're not going to invest in you or even consider it. And I'm like, but clearly that shows I know my customer and I've done something really different and we've helped people raise 25 million in less than 2 years. So clearly we're doing something right and we understand the market. Didn't matter. So again,
Yeah.
it totally depends on the investor. It's different and depending on where you are, what industry you're talking to and who you're talking to. But yeah.
And I just wanted to add to that, that even if you don't have customers, there's other ways to validate your business in the eyes of investors. I've heard so many people say who years ago who started with Kickstarters. They're like, the best thing I got out of Kickstarter was not that, oh, I raised X amount of money. It's that when I showed that to investors, they were like, oh, there really is a market for this product. You got people to pre-buy it. Yeah, we'll invest.
Yep. Yeah. That to me is the main point of customers is that you've proven there's a hunger for your solution and people willing to part with their money to get a piece of it.
So if you can pre-sell it on a Kickstarter, if you can get people to join your wait list, you know, those are things you can do to help validate the idea in the eyes of the investors.
Yep. Definitely.
Well, thank you so much. And, by the way, very subtle plug, these wonderful mentors, Peter and of course Heather and myself and Daria and lots of other, people, that have tremendous amount of knowledge that are available in office hours at Founder Keystone.
Yeah.
We will be posting on our YouTube channel. You'll get this video. Of course, make sure you go to Ceemo.ai and do you want to repeat that code for them to squeeze your profit margins a little
Yeah.
bit?
Yeah. If you go to Ceemo.ai, you can try out our free trial of our brand quiz generator. If you use code exceed, you can get 25% off all of our subscription tiers. And remember, we also offer custom pitch deck support, design services. So anything the platform doesn't do yet, since we're in beta, my team and I are here to help out so we can cover all of your marketing and pitch deck needs.
And get out there and unleash your inner Beyonce, everyone.
Yes.
And Michael, thank you for being a good sport and being our guinea pig. And I can't wait to get that harness for my dog.
Yeah.
Thank you
you,
so much
Michael.
for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Michael.
Yeah. I'll send you the deck I played with. But yeah. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good night,
All right.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Take care, everyone.